Using the first stance weapon in New World has been such an interesting journey. Finding that balance between the two stances has been a really tough time, but once you get to that point to where you feel comfortable and you can mesh the greatsword with whatever other weapon you're running it with, it really does open up some really new playstyles in combat and PvP, which has been really refreshing to see. As you guys have kind of seen, I've been talking about my build a little bit, but we're running a max rend setup here, and finally been getting some of the combos with Rapier and Greatsword down a lot better, and the amount of explosive potential this build has is actually pretty insane. It's similar to my Blood build, but there's so much less setup that you have to do, which is actually insane. You see there, off of a max rend backstab with our rogue rapier there, especially on light armor targets who aren't fortified when we're about to attack them. It's just a ridiculous amount of damage we can put out on this build. I've pretty much finalized where I want the build to be in terms of gear and perks and stats and everything. And we got a couple of fights today just to give you guys another update on what the build's looking like as we get hit by the hammers done. But we got a first fight here against a great sword hammer player, and we take a lot of attacks from that great sword early and take some damage. The thing that I've been learning on this build is I've been trying too much to try and duel them with that guard point. I find great sword is just too scary, because if you mess up the guard point at all, it ends up being your demise. So I have found myself to just end up dodging a lot of the greatsword attacks, and you see what that ends up allowing me to do is we can use the mobility of Relentless Rush to not only put us into a situation where we can open up on greatsword, but it puts us into offensive stance. And you saw already how much damage those heavies did. But we're back into a little skirmish here, and we now have the timing. Dodge that shockwave. We're going to pepper him up a little bit with the rapier and stick on him. But that Relentless Rush is so nice for chasing people down because it applies a slow. And as soon as he puts out that crosscut, we have the Calamity to take him out there. But yeah, bruiser fights have been feeling really good on this build. The actual builds that I was the most interested in how this build would perform against is ranged builds, and seeing as a lot of people are running Greatsword right now, I haven't been running into too many of them, but the ability to block ranged attacks is a really big thing that we never had on Rapier, and the few fights that I've gone into with ranged builds, the build just feels so good. That ability to just shut down moments like that when they start to pelt you with ranged attacks. We can not only go into our defensive stance off of that, but at any time we can open up with either the great sword or a rapier. And once you can catch a light armor player and start putting light attacks into them, it's really easy to catch on to them. As you see with that disgusting heavy there, as we run him out of stamina. The first attack, the first light attack on greatsword is actually ridiculous. It has some of the best tracking on any weapon's attacks that I've seen so far. When you're a pretty moderate distance away from people, if you just hit the light attack instead of a heavy first, you will just literally commando pro to your target and get the first stagger, and then you can then go in with heavies or abilities or whatever you want to do from there. So even chasing people with the weapon feels really good. But we have one last little duel here against a Sword and Shield and Greatsword player. Sword and Shield has been a really big pain for me on this build as well. But again, it's because of that dueling I've been trying to do with guard point. The really hard stuns like Shield Bash, if you just avoid them instead of trying to time your guard points, it ends up being a lot better off for you. I find I get more consistency off of slower abilities like hammer stuns and just attacks in general to use my guard points to block attacks and apply rends. But right there you see we dodge that shield bash as I'm looking for it, and now we feel safe to at least open up for damage. Immediately, I think one great sword attack there, we put in I think a third of his health and force him on the defensive there. I put in a couple of heavies here and just keep on the chase. Use that relentless rush to slow him down. Avoid that shield bash And with that out, we can pretty much use our rapier to just follow up the kill and finish him out there. But the build is just feeling so good. So the only really big changes that we made from the previous setup was actually dropping 50 strength for constitution. So we're actually running instead of 50 strength 200 con on this build. And I found this was kind of the thing that really helped us skirmish a little bit more just in general because of the fact that we're a full melee build. And it's just enough cushion, I find, that little bit of extra armor that we get to really help this be a light armor melee build. The 10% damage that we lose is definitely noticeable, but we are gaining this back through another passive. But yeah, having 13k health is a really nice cushion because we can take a couple of hits and not immediately be in the red on the build. But I did find my greatsword, and I'm so happy that it has the name that it does because I'm a pretty big nerd. But we are going to be using parry for this build. It drops in Lazarus from the final boss if you want to pick it up. And honestly, the thing I'm really excited about is I picked it up like I think a day or two ago, and I've been running PvP, but I didn't get my greatsword maxed until today. And the perks that it has on it pre-600 are Energizing Counter and Thwarting Strikes. We didn't have Vicious and the extra damage, obviously. So we're missing out literally on 12% damage the entire time, and the build still felt crazy. Especially the greatsword damage. So I'm really excited to just start running this now that we have it fully maxed out. We also got our tier 3 or our max heart rune. That mending form is actually crazy. It heals for 75% of the heart rune's damage. So it ends up healing for literally over 800 damage per second for 5 seconds. We do reduce damage, but that heal is definitely noticeable. Stacked with a regeneration potion, or even the critical comeback perk, when you can pop your stone form and then get a quick crit, you're getting 1,000 health per second back for 5 seconds. So I definitely think this is going to be the ultimate that we're running on this build because it really helps us maintain aggression or stay and not have to completely run away when we get low. It's a really nice heart rune. But everything else for the build is remaining the same. We're still running 3 pieces of Shirking Fort, Relentless Freedom, and Omnidirectional Evade. Now, obviously, Freedom is going to be a perk that is very desirable on especially any light armor build. But I found just that, especially because of the fact that we are a skirmisher on this and we're taking damage a lot, we are definitely going to be trying to go for Freedom on this. That'll be the end goal, is to get pieces with Shirking Fort, Resilient, and Freedom. But I just found, of the 2 perks, Shirking Fort and Freedom, that Shirking Fort was more valuable for me to have first, because especially when fighting multiple opponents, or even a single opponent, a lot of the times, most of the time, the issue that we run into on the build is not getting stunned. You can do a really good job of not ever getting stunned if you play correctly on this build. It's just taking damage. Light armor takes a ton of damage now, so I definitely want Shirking Fort first, and then we're going to be trying to go for those gold pieces with Freedom. But the amulets and our rings and everything is the same. The perks, though, it's almost the same setup. I did drop a couple of things, but pretty much everything is the same here. We were running Crush the Weak, but we did pick up Keen Posture instead. And I just found that with my playstyle, it just lent better into getting more consistent damage on the build. I find that I don't really use both my offensive abilities in like one rotation on the greatsword. A lot of the times what I'll end up doing is like poking in a little bit of damage with the rapier, and depending on where my opponent is if I can get in a lot of damage on the rapier and they disengage, I'll then close up with a Relentless Rush to get that slow, go in for a heavy, get that guaranteed crit, and then switch back to my rapier to try to finish them off. And then vice versa, if they're really close to me and we have an opportunity to stagger, I'll swap to a stagger, get in a heavy attack, and then swap back. Crush the Weak can be good for like consistent damage over a fight on a single target, but I just found for bursting people in Windows, Keen Posture just ended up being better. And then I dropped Perfect Vigilance, mainly because of the cooldown. I just found I could get more value out of an offensive perk, and especially because we dropped that 50 strength, we get it back through Blade Honing. There's a ton of greatsword buffs that we can get, and we can pretty much have this maxed on either ability use almost all the time. So that 10% we lost, we get back from Blade Honing, but we're still running Wary Posture, Guarded Shift, Unflinching Blade, Arrow Deflection, and Faultless. I'm definitely going to do a more in-depth build video once I get my rune gems and everything for the build. And within the next day or two, I will be doing a update, and I'll be giving you guys an idea on what rune glasses I'll be going for all my builds, just so you guys can like go for them yourselves for the build that you want to run. But for this one, we're probably gonna end up doing like 1 or 2 pieces of energizing, and then the rest physical damage. I really want to push the greatsword damage that we can get on this build. But as always, if you guys have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments. But thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.